Hi everybody, welcome to GTCoding. In this video, I'll show you how to design this page using Tailwind CSS. Now it is also responsive, so I'll just go to the inspector. And let's decrease the width of the screen. And here we can see when we decrease the width of the screen, the cards are moving down. And now here you can see there are two items in a row. And when we are less than a specific amount, we can see that all the cards are one below the other, and we have this 100% width for these cards. So this is what we're going to design in this video, and we're going to use Tailwind CSS to design this. So let's get started. This is the homepage of Tailwind CSS, tailwindcss.com, and here we can see that the main purpose of Tailwind is to build a website without ever leaving your HTML. So in your HTML tags, you can use classes like flex, pt4, text center, and so on. And it will add some specific CSS classes to the element. So here we can see an example of how it will look, and this over here is the result of what we have over here on the right. And we can see that these classes are being added to the HTML elements, and we can see that with so little lines of code we have this design over here. So normally what we would do is we would just create these HTML elements over here, and then we will add some classes over here. For example, for the figure, we will add a class called main container or something, and then we will create a CSS file and then add display of flex and the color and all those things inside the CSS. But here we can see that everything is written over here in the HTML, and we don't need to go to our CSS file to design this. So let's get started by creating an empty project. Now I have created this empty project called features card, and I have opened it with Visual Studio Code, and you can also install an extension for Tailwind CSS in VS Code. So if you go over here to extensions and search for Tailwind CSS, you can see this extension over here called Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. So if you install this extension, you'll be able to write the code easily because it will give you a lot of suggestions while writing the code. Alright, now let's start with setting up the Tailwind CSS. There's also an option to use Tailwind CSS using CDN. So you can just copy the link of the CDN and add it to your HTML file, and then just start writing the code. But it has a lot of limitations, so we're going to use npm to set up Tailwind CSS. So just go over here to view and click on terminal. So this option over here, and you will have this terminal opened over here. Now for working with npm, you need to have Node.js installed on your system. So just type node and press -v and press enter, and you should have a version number displayed over here. And if you don't have this, and if you have an error displayed over here instead, then it means that Node.js is not installed on your system. Now to install Node.js, you can go to nodejs.org and just click on this download button and just install it like all the other applications. And once you install Node.js on your system, just run this command node-v, and you'll be able to see this node version number over here. And once you're done that, you have to write a command called npm init-y, and this will initialize your project. So let's press enter. And now we can see that we have a new file created over here. It is called package.json, and this will contain the description of our project. And whenever we install a new package, it will be displayed over here in the package.json file. So we need to install a couple of packages for Tailwind CSS to work. So let's install all of them. So let's type npm install, and we need to install Tailwind CSS first of all. So let's type Tailwind CSS. The next thing we need to install is auto prefixer. So let's type auto prefixer. And one more thing we need to install is post CSS CLI. So type this command as it is: npm install Tailwind CSS, auto prefixer, and post CSS CLI. And let's go ahead and press enter. And now we can see that the package.json file is updated, and we have the auto prefixer, post CSS CLI, and Tailwind CSS, and everything is installed. And here we also have a new folder, and in that we have all the files that are required for the packages. We don't need to worry about this folder. Alright, now the next thing we need to do is we need to initialize Tailwind CSS. So for that we have to type a command called npx tailwind css init, and we'll also type -p to create the post CSS config file as well. So let's press enter. So here we can see there are two new files created. One is the Tailwind CSS config file, so this is how it looks, and the other is the post CSS config file. and this is how it looks. Right now let's create two folders. So we'll create a folder called source. You can name these folders anything you want. I'm just naming it source, and the other folder we will call public. Now this is where we're going to write the HTML. So let's go over here to public and create a new file, and we'll name it index.html. And we'll also create a style.css file. So let's create a new file and we'll name it style.css. Now we are not going to write any CSS over here. Everything will be auto-generated by Tailwind CSS. Now let's go over here to source, and let's create a new file called style.css. And here we need to write 3 lines of code. So let's type at tailwind and then type base. And we also need to write at tailwind components and at tailwind utilities. Right now the next thing we need to do is we need to generate all the CSS of Tailwind CSS and add it to our style.css file over here in the public folder. So for that, let's go over here to package.json file, and we will add a script for that. So let's just rename this to, let's say, build CSS, and let's replace this with the code to build our Tailwind CSS. So here you have to type post CSS and then type the source file and the output file. So the source file is the style.css inside the source. So let's type ./src/style.css, and then we have to type -o for output, and here we'll type ./public/style.css. Right now with this command we're going to generate the Tailwind CSS styles in our public folder style.css file. So let's run this command. So here we'll just type npm run, and we'll type build CSS, and let's press enter, and the process has completed. So let's go to our style.css file in the public folder, and here we can see all the CSS that we have for the Tailwind CSS displayed over here, and it is a huge file, and in that we have all the styles needed for Tailwind CSS to work. Right now let's type some HTML, and let's see whether the Tailwind CSS works. So in VS Code you have this shortcut where you can just press exclamation and press tab, and you'll have this basic HTML5 code. Now here in the title I'll just type features, and here we'll link our CSS file. So let's type link, and in the href we will just type style.css, and let's create an h1, and let's see whether the Tailwind CSS is working. So I'll just type testing, and we'll just add some classes. So I'll just type class equals, and we'll type text, and we'll create a large text. So I'll just type text for Excel, and we'll also give it a color of text red 500. Right now let's test and see whether it works. So I have this extension over here called live server. So if you go over here to extensions and search for live server, you will have this extension, and just go ahead and install it. And once you install it, you can just go ahead and right click over here in the HTML file and click on open with live server, and here we can see our file is being displayed, and we have testing written in red color, and we also have the large text. So now we know that Tailwind CSS is working alright. Now before getting started with our design, we need to make some changes to our Tailwind config file. That's because we're going to use a font called Poppins for this design, and we need to add that to our Tailwind config file. So first of all, let's get the link of the font from Google Fonts. So here I'm in Google Fonts. So let's go ahead and select this font called Poppins, and let's see what are the styles we need to add. So we need to add the bold version of the font. So let's go ahead and select the bold version from here. So I think we will select medium 500, or let's add this semi-bold. Right now let's copy this and add this link to our HTML. So we'll just paste it over here. Right, we have added the link of the font. Now let's see how to use this in Tailwind CSS. So we're going to set the font to the body so that all the elements will have the same font. So in Tailwind CSS you have to type class, and here you have to type font and then the name of the font. So by default we can see that there is font sans, font serif, and font mono. So if you want to add a custom font, we have to make some changes in the Tailwind config file. Alright, so let's go ahead and delete this from here, and let's go to the Tailwind config file. So here we can see we have the theme, and then we have extend. So in the extend we need to add the font. So let's add the font over here. So we have to type font family colon, and then in curly braces we have to write the name of the font. So we can name the font anything we want. So I'll just type Poppins over here, and we'll type colon, and here we have to create an array. So here we will type Poppins and sans serif. Alright, now we have extended the Tailwind CSS and we have a new font family called Poppins, and in that we have this value Poppins and sans serif. So let's save it. Now whenever you make some changes to the Tailwind config file, you have to build the Tailwind CSS once more. So let's open the terminal and let's go back to our package.json file and let's see what is the command. So we have the command build CSS. So let's type npm run build CSS. Alright, the Tailwind CSS has been built. So let's close this and let's also close these two files. Alright, now let's add the font. So I'll just type font dash, and here we can see we have a new option called Poppins. So let's type that Poppins and let's save it and let's go back to our design. And now we can see that we have the Poppins font in our design. So now let's start with our design. Let's start with the mobile version. So I'll just delete this h1 and let's start by creating a container division. So let's create a division and we will add some classes over here. So let's type class, and if you go back to our design, we can see that we have this background color over here. We have a light blue background color and we have 100% width for the container division. So let's go over here and type w-full, and this will set the width of the element to 100%, and we will set the minimum height to the full screen. So for that we have to type min h screen. So now this will set a width of 100% and a minimum height of 100 viewport height. Alright, so let's also add a background color. So I'll just type bg blue and we'll set the value to 50. And now we can see that the background color has changed a little bit. We'll just add a higher value so that we can see it clearly. And here we can see that the background color has changed. So let's change it back to 50. Alright, that's it with the container division. Now let's go ahead and create the h1. Here we can see we have this h1 and we have this text over here. So I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it over here. I'll just create an h1 and paste it over here. Alright, now let's add some styles to the h1. So I'll just type class. First of all, we'll set the font to bold. So I'll just type font bold, and then we'll set the text to a large text. So I'll just type text dash XL, and we'll also bring it to the center. So for that you have to type text center. Alright, now let's add some padding to the container division. So let's go back to the container division and here we will type p dash and we'll set the value to 6. So now we have some padding, and let's go back to our design, and here we can see we have a different color for the features, and I think the font also has more weight. So let's go back to this link over here for Google Fonts and we'll just change 600 to 700. Alright, now we have more weight for the font. Now let's go back over here to the h1 and we have to change the color of features. So let's create a span and let's cut features from here, and we will add it to the span, and let's change the color of the text. So I'll just type class equals, and here we'll type text dash red dash, and we'll type the value to 500, and now we can see we have a red color for the features. Alright, that's it with the h1. Now let's go ahead and start with all the cards. So we'll create a container division to hold all the cards. So let's create a division over here. So here I'll just add a comment. So I'll just type card container start, and let's create a division, and for this division we will set the display to flex. So for that we have to type class equals, and we just have to type flex, and it will set the display to flex. So here we can see display of flex, and we also have to center all the elements inside this division, but we'll do that later. First of all, let's create this card. So let's go ahead and create a division for that, and in that we need to have 3 elements. One is this image, and then we have some text, and then we have this button. So I have already imported some images in this public folder. So I have this folder called images, and in that we have these images. These are SVG images, so we're going to use these in our design. I will leave the link of the source code in the description, so you can just go ahead and download these images. Alright, so the first thing we need to have is this image. So let's add the image right here. So let's type img, and in the src we'll just type images slash, and the first image is database icon, and the next thing we need to have is a heading. So we have database support written over here. So let's copy this and let's create an h2, and we'll just paste it over here. And the last thing we need to add is a button, and the text is no more. So let's create an anchor tag for that, and here I'll just type no more. Alright, that's it with all the elements. Now let's add some styles to this division right here. So this is the division for the card. So let's type class and we'll set the display to flex. So I'll just type flex over here. And now we can see all the elements are one next to the other. So we have to set the flex direction to column. So for that you have to type flex col. And now we can see that everything is one below the other. And we need to have a white background color. So I'll just type BG white. And then we also need to have rounded corners. So I'll just type rounded. And here I'll just type dash LG for large border radius. And let's also add some shadow. So I'll just type shadow. And we will have medium shadow. So I'll just type dash MD. And now we can see that we have some shadow displayed over here. And we'll also set the width to full. So now we can see we have a width of 100%. Let's also add some margin. So I'll just type M and we'll set the value to 6. Alright, now the next thing we will do is style this image. So here we will add a class and we'll set the height to 20. And we'll also set some margin over here. So I'll just type M6. Right, now let's style the H2. So here we'll add a class. Let's bring it to the center. So we'll just type text center. And we'll also add some padding to the left and the right. So we have to type PX for left and right. And we'll set a value of 2. Alright, now let's style the anchor tag. So we have this no more button over here. So let's type class. And first of all, let's set the background color. So I'll just type BG-blue. And we'll set the value to 500. And we'll set the text color to white. So we'll just type text white. And we'll add some padding. So we'll just type P. And we'll just add a padding of 3. So I'll just type P-3. And let's bring it to the center. So I'll just type text center. Right, now let's add some padding bottom to this heading right here. So let's go to the H2. And here we'll add a new class. We'll just type PB for padding bottom. And we'll set a value of 5. And here we can see that there's no border radius at the bottom. So for that we have to set the overflow of hidden for this division right here, because we have already added a border radius over here. And here if you will set the overflow to hidden, so let's type overflow hidden, then anything outside this division won't be visible. So here we can see we have these rounded corners at the bottom. Alright, now let's set a hover effect to this button. So when we hover over this button, we want to change the color. So here we can see we have a dark blue color. And we also have a transition for smooth animation. So let's go back. To add a hover, you have to type hover, colon, and then the property. So here we will type BG blue, and we'll set the value to 800 for a dark blue color. And we'll also add a transition. So I'll just type transition all, and we'll also set the transition duration. So we have to type duration, and we'll set it to 500. Now let's hover over this button, and we can see that the hover effect is working alright. Now the next thing we will do is when we increase the width of the screen, we want to have a fixed width for this card. So I'll just increase the width of this browser. And here we can see we have a fixed width for these cards. So let's go back to our HTML. Now there are different breakpoints by default in Tailwind CSS. So there are breakpoints like SM, LG, MD, and so on. So SM is basically for the mobile version. So let's type SM. And when we have a screen width greater than a mobile version, we will set the width to a set value. So we'll just type width of 52. And now we can see that we have a set width for this card over here. But when we decrease the size of the screen, we can see that we have 100% width. So when we are on a mobile version, this is how it will look. And when we are on a desktop version, this is how it will look. Alright, that's pretty much it with the design of the card. So let's copy this and let's paste it 3 more times. Alright, so I have created 3 more cards, and now we can see that we have some problems with the design. So what we have to do is we have to set a flex wrap value over here. So right now it is not wrapping to the next line. So for the container division, which is this division right here, card container, so let's type flex wrap. And now we can see that everything looks alright. Let's increase the width of the screen. And here we also need to bring it to the center. So let's type justify center. Now all the elements are in the center. And everything looks alright. Now when we are on a bigger screen, we need to increase the font size. So here we can see we have a higher font size. And we also have some margin here at the top. So it is somewhere around here. So let's add some styles for the MD. just like we added for the SM. So here we can see we have added a property for SM. So now when the screen is greater than MD, which is a medium size screen, we have to set a larger font size for this H1. So let's go to the H1. So this is the H1. So here we will add some classes. So here we'll type MD for medium screen, and here we will type text 3XL, and we'll also add some margin to the top when we are on this screen size. So let's type MD once again, and here we'll type MT for margin top, and we'll type 12. And now we can see we have some margin top for this H1, and let's also set some margin bottom for this H1. So here for the H1 we will just type MB for margin bottom, and we'll just type 4 over here. Alright, so that looks alright. So when we are less than medium size screen, we have a smaller text over here, and here we have 100% width for these cards. So that's pretty much it with our design. Now let's go ahead and change this data over here. So for the second card we have the email icon. So here I'll just type email, and here we'll just type email support, and let's scroll down, and for the third card we have chat support. So here I'll just type chat icon.svg, and here we'll type chat support, and the last image is for terminal commands. So let's scroll down, and here we'll type terminal icon, and here we'll type terminal commands. So that's basically with the design of our features card, and it is totally responsive. So this is the mobile version, and here we can see we have the tablet version, and if we increase the screen width, this is the desktop version. So this is how it will look on a desktop device. So that's basically how you can quickly create some design using Tailwind CSS. So when you use Tailwind CSS, you don't need to go to the CSS file, and you can quickly create your design using the HTML itself. And all the classes used in Tailwind CSS are easy to remember because it is almost the same as the actual CSS. And Tailwind CSS is not like the other CSS libraries like Bootstrap. So using Bootstrap you have some components like buttons and tabs and so on. So if you add those classes, your elements will be turned into a specific type of design. But if you want to use Tailwind CSS, you have to know CSS thoroughly, and you can go ahead and style all the elements however you want, and nobody will be able to look at your design and recognize that you are using Tailwind. And all the classes inside Tailwind are customizable, so you can go ahead and change the values of any of these classes you want. You can go to the Tailwind config file and make the changes over here, and then just build Tailwind CSS and you'll be good to go. So that's basically how you create this design using Tailwind CSS. So I will leave the link of the source code in the description of this video. So if you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.